Welcome, we are back with another episode of Zero to Hero. Tank Edition. You guys seem to be really enjoying this series so far. We are popping off at the moment, so I'd like to take a moment to thank everyone for the support. Also, the amount of tips people have been sharing. I've been like a sponge soaking up all this information, and I've been applying them in the dungeons too, so it's been great. With that said, let's run it back with the easiest tank in the game, Protection Warrior. This is how we're looking kicking off this episode. My goal today is just to push and try and get invited to 10s, but let's be honest, who'd want to invite this guy? We are kicking it off with an 8 grunt Batol. This dungeon gets a lot of hate, but for me, it's one of the easier dungeons this season. Well, to tank anyway. Playing healer in this dungeon was hands down one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I remember I was freaking out when I saw someone hit minus 24% health, yet he was still stood there casting away. Like, what the fuck? But as a tank, it's not too bad, especially for a warrior. Normally, the tank buster moves like Skull Splitter and Molten Flurry would hurt really bad, but because they're physical attacks, you don't even feel them if you have shield block up. I even let my shield block drop during Molten Flurry, but still even managed to take a few swipes before the damage even kicked in. Also, Spell Reflections is OP in this dungeon. You can reflect back Shadow Flame Slash and Lava Fist, 2 abilities that normally hit the tank pretty hard. Do we even need to talk about this third boss at this point? This corner strat is so busted. The only way you can fail is if your team is another breed. The only mistake made this dungeon was during the dragon skip. My healer ended up butt pulling it. Thankfully, the dragon reset after he did, so it wasn't a huge mess. But I did end up nearly dying after trying to save my pally with Intervene. We stabilized the pack though and took it down before we all perished. The final boss is also good as a warrior. I got told in my first video you can spell reflect the tentacles, so this made the fight a whole lot easier. The tank buster also felt like I got punched in the face by a 3-year-old. We closed out our first day on what is considered one of the hardest dungeons this season. We also got a belt, but it wasn't an upgrade. Now, let's actually do the hardest dungeon this season, a 9 set your threads. Raise your hands if you hate this dungeon. Normally, I check people's gear and IO rating before every dungeon, but this time I forgot and decided to do the big pull. This was a big mistake. The pull was a little shaky. I used Disruptive Shout, but I guess it wasn't in range to hit this guy. At this point, I should have just committed to the spiders, but nah. I follow my Lord and Savior Nick A30. Never back down, never what?
Never give up.
Yeah. Well, that ended up costing us big time. No one was interrupting the spider, so it just blasted down our mage and then our druid. By the time I got to it and finally brought it to the group, it was too late. So it was just 2 whole minutes of people just running back and instantly dying. This is why you kick people. One little mob can cause so much mayhem. Going into the first boss, we already had 11 deaths on the board. The damage was also shocking. The hope of timing this key wasn't there, and after witnessing this death, I just gave up. We also lost our healer during the repositioning, even though I pinged 2 times. So at this point, I called it quits. Not enough damage or heals to even do that, trust me. Trust me, I know. If they're struggling on the first few mobs, there ain't no way they're doing the rest of that. I know it's content and I should have played it through, but my mental health can't take it anymore. We are moving on to the next dungeon, which was an 8 Necrotic Wake. All my homies hate Necrotic Wake. Nah, but for real, this dungeon isn't too bad. The first pull is a little scary, and I guess the second boss, and maybe the third boss, and maybe all the packs, on second thought, this dungeon is hell. But hey, we're a warrior, we just ignore all that pain and suffering. The first pack ended up turning into a chain pull, which was a little scary, but thankfully we only need to press 4 buttons, so the chances of dying was slim. We also got into a habit of telling my team to aim the frontal behind the boss, and the success rate of people being hit has dropped massively. It's still not 100%, but what do you expect from a pickup group? There was a massive mistake when we finished off the Necromancer pack. I didn't notice, but our hunter's pet ended up grabbing the pack behind us. I went over to the pack next to the weapon, and then all hell broke loose. I could have maybe tanked the pack, but it was pretty spread out and I didn't use my spell block ability. Plus, the Necromancer would have just kept spawning more adds, so yeah, after a little while I eventually died. We slapped down the second boss because we had a DK that could grab in the mages, so the boss died before it even made it to his second rotation. We also messed a hook up on the fix 8-bit, but it didn't really matter and we still finished off the boss with no more problems. We got traded some shoulders, which we later changed into a set piece and jumped straight in to a 9 Stonevault. This was another rough dungeon, from start to, well, not finish because we didn't make it that far, so let me just break it down instead. The first pull was rubbish. My opening was a little shaky, but we stabilised it. Straight after, the golem hit us with a ground pound, and I guess the loader bots also jumped at my team, which wiped everyone. Then it snowballed into my team, taking constant big damage, which I guess messed with their rotation, so the damage was super low. We got to the first boss and my healer straight up walked into the rock, which of course led to a wipe. He also didn't know the Dispel, which isn't a massive problem for warriors, but still kind of annoying. The affix kept going off too, so the boss just kept healing back up, and I already used Stone Form to cleanse it, so I didn't have it up for the others. So when it came in again and healed the boss from 11% all the way to 30%, I reached my limit and called it quits. I sent a link to my healer about this affix, and I hope it saves fellow tanks in the future. Link to the weak aura in the description. Our next dungeon was a whole lot better. We closed out an 8 Arakara with 13 minutes to spare. Easy. Let's try and make up for our fail and run back another Stonevault.
Here. Defensive. Here. Here. Here.
What the fuck?
First. Defensive.
That's almost.
Defensive.
That opening's so annoying. That opening was a little shaky. I did interrupt by the way, but someone CC'd as soon as I did, so it didn't actually go through. Gotta love this new interrupting system. Surprise, surprise, our healer didn't know the Dispel. But who's even keeping track at this point? It's only 4 months into the season. It's not like it mattered anyway. We blasted this boss down super fast. Even the next boss didn't stand a chance. We lusted on the knockdown and took him to Pound Town. We did so much damage and he died before the second fortified shell. I need to figure out a path to kite these mobs on this bit, because once them stacks of fractures start racking up, I need to get the hell out of there. And I did, but then one of my teammates decided to knock them right back into me. Thanks for that, mate. Luckily, we got a quick battle res and finished off the pack. I also finally found a nice spot to kite it as well. The dynamic duo was also easy, and there's no point even talking about this final boss. We closed out the Stonevault and got ourselves some legs. And we actually won a roll for once. Yes, I finally got a good roll for once. Yes. But it was super close. We turned our legs into a set piece and leveled up our gear some more. And now this is what we're working with. Is this guy trying to take my job? I'm the only one that can offer tips around here, pal. Did you guys know that you can line of sight this crushing slam? Well, now you do. The guy was right. It was our first 9, but only as a warrior. And this tank is easy. There's no way I can get my teammates killed. Wait, that wasn't on me. The first boss was a little shaky. It got to the point where I was tanking the population of a small town, but we finally managed to kite the boss into a bomb and carried on like nothing happened. I kinda messed up my intervene here, crashing into my teammate at the same time as the mob did. Then my healer proceeded to get ambushed, so he eventually died. Lockwood was also good. I normally struggle getting the threat on these guys that jump in, but it's not too bad on Warrior. This next pull can be a little annoying. The camera is bad and also the bananas can sometimes mess you over. And that is exactly what happened. My shield block dropped as soon as I slipped on the banana. So the mob just slowly slapped me down while my healer was just stood there picking his nose. I fucking slipped on a banana. We tried that pull again, but I just instantly died. These 2 mistakes by me almost cost us the dungeon. But we just took it slow and avoided the packs we didn't need. We took down the big dumb giant and had 5 minutes to close it out. If we just don't make any more mistakes, we can time this. It ended up being fine in the end. I did want to know if I can spell reflect this putrid water, but I was a little too slow to test it. We closed out this dungeon with a minute to spare. We didn't get any loot, but we are just now 250 IO rating to Keystone Hero. We did one more dungeon before calling it a night, and it was a goddamn 9 city of threads. This third boss is scary as hell. I prefer to use Lusty over the last one, mainly because I've noticed that we struggle way more on this boss than we do the final one. And it's mostly because of these damn orbs. I felt like Pac-Man during this boss. Unfortunately, spell reflection does not work on these orbs, so we just have to eat them and hope our healer can bail us out. Our hunter dropped just before the first Dark Pulse, so I was very worried at this point. Luckily, he got a quick battle res before it went off. When Dark Pulse finally did go off, I intervened on my healer and hoped for the best. We lost our hunter again, but we still had another battle res. On the last 8%, I was shitting bricks. The orbs were coming in, and Dark Pulse was just seconds away to blast everyone down. So I just said fuck it, and ate every orb I could see, and then popped my trusty Algory healing pot, and bam, it worked out. Thank God it did, because our monk ended up DCing right after. He came back though, just before the final boss. The final boss isn't too bad on warrior either. You can spell reflect Splice, which is the big damage dot that goes on everyone. Also, the tank pussy is just fine, just popping shield wall and tanking them blows straight to the face. The only scary bit is when you get rooted. If you don't stack with your team, it can get a little close. We ended up getting no loot once again, but we are just one step closer to achieving Keystone Hero. If you like the content, subscribe. If you made it this far, we already know you like the content, so subscribe anyway. Like, comment, all of that good stuff. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.